Hi, welcome to the Selfish Griever podcast. Today I'm excited to talk to you about signs from your loved ones, signs from angels, and breadcrumbs from the universe, but more importantly, how you can recognize them and ask for more of them. But before we get started, I wanted to take a quick moment to talk about how you can help support the show. As you know, producing a high-quality podcast takes a lot of time and resources. From recording, editing, and promoting each episode, it's about a labor of love. But I couldn't do it without the support of listeners like you. I've set up a Patreon page where you can become a monthly supporter of the show. Your support will help me cover the cost of the services to produce the show, invest in better equipment to improve audio quality, and keep bringing you 2 new episodes every week. But here's the thing. I don't want you to support just because I asked. I want you to support me because you believe in what I'm doing and you want to be a part of it. That's why I'm offering special perks for our supporters at each tier, like personal shoutouts at the beginning of the episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and the top tier supporters have access to a live Q&A with me twice a month. So if you believe in the mission of the Selfish Griever and you want to help me continue to bring valuable content to the listeners, I'd be grateful for your support. You can find my Patreon page by clicking the link in the description of this episode. I'd also like to take a moment to mention one of the first big supporters of my show, and that's my mom. She offered to be a monetary supporter, which I gratefully declined, but she's supported in other ways like learning how to upload a podcast and follow and subscribe. She even requested business cards that she could hand out because she's been telling everybody about the show. This is not standard mom behavior, especially not when your daughter's taking to a public platform to tell people that she gets signs from her dead son and talks to angels. She's a great example of other ways that you can support the show without money by sharing, subscribing, and rating and reviewing the show. Thank you so much, and let's get started. This is the Selfish Griever podcast, and I'm Whitney Samarano. I've been a grieving mom since June 2020, when one of my twin sons died in an accident when he was 2 years old. I help moms who have lost a child navigate grief spiritually and find purpose again. This is a podcast where we'll talk about the grief journey for moms, spiritual support, and following intuition as you move forward. On this podcast, you'll hear mine and other grieving moms talk about their story, as well as interviews with professionals in the spiritual community. Welcome to the Selfish Griever podcast. Hey, I'm so glad that you came back to listen to another episode, because today I want to talk about my favorite subject, signs. I believe that there's 3 categories to signs, which are signs from our loved ones, angel signs, and what I call breadcrumbs from the universe. But before we get into all that, I wanted to share a little bit about my history with signs, because I think it's easy to listen to me now, sound so excited about them, and think that it's always been this way. That I've always believed in them, I've always seen them, and that I never struggled with accepting them. But I was looking back through my journal, because journaling for me is a way that I really process my grief, and I started it right at the very beginning. I've filled 5 journal books now in the 2 years and 7 months since Orion died. And he died on June 21st, 2020. And my first journal entry is July 1st, 2020. And I can tell you from reading back through these that it was not easy. And I didn't see signs. And I didn't believe that there was anybody out there who was looking out for me. In fact, I spent a lot of time asking myself, why was God punishing me? What did I do wrong? Did I not pray hard enough? Did I not believe enough? I always had an inkling towards intuition. I did see times in my life that things that I thought were so horrible at the time later turned out to be for my benefit. So I did believe in, maybe not God per se, because I didn't think that God was really concerning himself with my little day-to-day life. But something out there was overseeing and orchestrating to some extent the events in my life that would lead to the next event that would lead to something good. But I wasn't receiving signs from anybody. And looking back through my journal, I found the entry that I had when I really first wrote about a sign that I received. And so I want to share that with you. This is my first angel sign. The entry is dated September 17th, 2020. While driving on the freeway, I saw a flatbed truck that I took notice of because it had the word techo on the back in a Spanish phrase. I've never seen this word anywhere except for on my grandmother's office complex. Techo verde. Techo means roof in Spanish, and verde means green. And her office complex had a green tile roof, so it was called Techo Verde. And while I was thinking about how crazy that was, I looked down and the license plate had 999 in it. I looked that up and it's the angel number for new beginnings. I thought also for note that 9 plus 9 plus 9 equals 27. And Orion and Maverick's birthday is 9/27/17. I don't know if I'm ready for new beginnings, but I felt like in that moment of deep despair, the angels were telling me it's going to get better. The next entry that I put in my journal, dated 9/29/20. This is 2 days after Orion's 3rd birthday. It says, I started this journal entry by reading through my other entries from the beginning. I only made it to the poem I wrote at the 1-month anniversary. I'm sitting at my spot on the mountain, and I was crying so much as I read back over my entries that not even the birds would visit near me. I feel utterly alone, without even the wildlife for my usual comfort. But that is what grief, desperate, ugly, unproductive grief is like. Isolating, cutting you off from everyone, even God's presence. I hate that feeling, so I need to fight back to myself carrying my grief with me, but not letting it blind me. I saw another license plate with a 999 on my way to drop Maverick off at school. This was right after I was telling God that I hate this life and I don't want it anymore. The 3 9s symbolize a new beginning is coming, and you will recall I saw it about 2 weeks ago on a truck with the word techo on my way to my friends, when I was yet again complaining. So when I saw the 999s a second time, I told God, okay, I got it. Something is coming that is going to make life better in a more tolerable sense. Then I asked God if he ever gets tired of having to repeatedly explain these things to me over and over again. I felt like God probably chuckled at that. Then I picked up Maverick from school and drove to the cemetery. On the way I saw 333 2 times, once on a bus bench and again on a billboard. Now I admit, sometimes I am driving around checking every street sign, building address, and license plate, but these signs always jump out when I'm not looking for them. When I'm just going about my day, usually deep in my own thoughts. And after I saw 333 twice, I thought, okay, Whitney, you're making a big deal out of nothing. Of course you saw it, because that company wants a catchy phone number, so they use the same number repeatedly, and they advertise on a bench bus and the billboard you saw in close proximity to each other. But right as that thought entered my head, a car pulled in front of me with a 444 on their plate. I literally said out loud, "What the heck is going on?" and thought silently the whole universe is going nuts. I of course didn't know the meaning of these angel signs and had to look them up. 333 means it's time to move on and let go of the past, leaving it there and focusing on the present. And 444 means you are spiritually awakening and becoming more perceptive to the signs. I immediately recoiled at the 3's description, thinking, I can't leave Orion behind. But now I think it's the spirits guiding me that Orion isn't coming back. And I need to accept him as I have him now. The 4s, I think that's the spirit telling me, no, you're not crazy. You are seeing our signs. Trust them. And I feel crazy because I'm trying to trust them. I'm so glad I have these journal entries because they speak to a time when I didn't believe like I believe now. And I think that's important for people to know because it's okay if you're doubting the signs. And I also want it to be clear that the signs are incredible, but they don't bring my son back. They can't substitute holding him or kissing his cheeks. I read that time doesn't heal grief. Only a conscious decision to process your feelings and find a purpose, a way to move forward, can do that. And while I understand that sentiment because I myself have done a lot of work to get here, I do think time does something without a griever's intention. It fades the memories, thereby numbing the pain just enough to take the edge off that I used to feel in the beginning when my arms still carried the impression of his weight and my lips still knew the softness of his cheek. Those once strong memories have now blurred around the edges, becoming more of a feeling than a mental photograph. And the signs bring up those feelings for me, sometimes so strongly that I cry at the pain of their physical loss. But most often, the signs are like a warm hug, a timely reminder that I'm not alone and he still sees me now. In my interview last week with Patty, she said the signs aren't about being photographed and shared on social media. And I think that's so true. For me, that's probably the best part about signs, is that they're not meant for everybody. Your signs are meant just for you. And that's so powerful because you don't have to prove them to anybody else. And really, it doesn't matter if you believe that the signs I'm talking about for me are real. I don't share them because I need any validation from anybody else. I would be just as satisfied and comforted by the signs if I never talked about them to anybody. I'm here sharing them because they are so beautiful for me that I want to help other people either feel safe to talk about the signs that they get or to get more signs for themselves if they want. So today's episode, I want to talk about a book that I read that really helped me and some tips that I have for other people who are looking to get their own signs and how to recognize them. All the signs are special in their own right, but I think for grievers, the signs from loved ones are the best ones. And these ones, I think, can be the most fun, too. Because really, a sign from a loved one could be absolutely anything that means something to you. I've talked to parents who find random dimes and know that's a sign, or feathers, or for me, it's hummingbirds. For Orion's dad, it's roadrunners. Some people find butterflies. And other people have crazy stories about completely random things that they ask for. The first book that I remember really resonating with about signs is a book called Signs, the Secret Language of the Universe by Laura Lynne Jackson. And what made this book so impressionable for me is that she's a medium, so of course she knows about signs, but the large premise of her book was showcasing grieving people receiving signs. And they had these incredible stories that were so relatable. I read them and thought that could be me getting a sign. And it really made it possible for me to believe that I could get them too. And so I highly recommend anybody who's interested in learning more about signs, look up that book. She has it as an audiobook as well. But I'd say that the key things to take away from the book are that you have to communicate to your loved one that you want signs. They may be on the other side, but they're not mind readers. So talk to them. If you would like to receive a sign, let them know. And then the second most important thing is pick what the sign should be. And Laura really recommends that you get creative with this because you can make it something challenging, especially if you're a skeptic. Pick something that would just be so miraculous for you to get. This one woman asked for her mom to send her Irish soda bread. I don't even know what Irish soda bread is, but according to her story in the book, it's a seasonal item. And within a couple weeks, some Irish soda bread was delivered to her mailbox. So it really can be anything, and you can totally embrace that and have fun with it. And not in a goading your loved one kind of way, but maybe in a playful testing kind of way. And then the third step, after you've requested what you want and been specific, you have to trust that it's coming and keep an eye out for it. Laura says, and I agree, it's pretty much guaranteed if you do those 3 things, you're going to receive a sign. You may not receive a sign tomorrow. It may take a couple weeks, especially depending on the complexity of your request, but it's going to come through. And you're more than likely going to be surprised by the way that it shows up when it does. Another tip that I'd like to add about the beauty of this is the signs aren't just reserved for immediate family. I got this Instagram message the other day from someone who said she's trying to support a grieving mom whose son died in a terrible accident, and she just doesn't know what to do. And I wrote her back and told her to try and be present the best that she can so that that mom knows that she's there for her when she's ready. But also, talk to her son. He can hear her, even though she's just a friend of the family. And ask him for her own sign from him. Something that she could share with his mom later to help support her and help her realize that he's not gone and it wasn't her fault. So really, these signs are available to anybody. Okay, on to category number 2, the angel signs. So these kind of follow a format a little bit more than signs from loved ones. But I will say there are a lot of books out there about angel signs. Kyle Gray in particular is an angel sign expert, if there is such a thing, and he's written a couple books about it. So if that's something that is of interest to you, I really recommend you check out his material. I personally first got introduced to angel signs when I started following medium Corrine on Instagram. I sought her out primarily for her mediumship services, but to be honest, I don't remember how I first came across her profile. But once I was there, I saw her talking about angel signs, and she had posted her interpretation for each of them, the triple digit series ranging from 1 to 9. And that was my first introduction. And as you heard in my journal entries, I first started seeing triple digits on license plates. And I would go back to her page to reference her interpretation of them because she was the only person I knew who was talking about them. And later on, I don't remember how much longer after that, but at some point I was seeing them so frequently and feeling such a strong connection with them that I wanted to learn more. That's my personality style. When there's something that interests me, I want to do a deep dive and read all the information that there is. And that's how I found Kyle Gray. But in the instance of the angel signs, as I tried to research more, it kind of made it harder for me to interpret the messages. It was like there was too much information for me to try and consider, and some of it was overlapping with other stuff, and some of it was completely contrary to previous things. And I just decided I had to stop. What I had was working with my interpretation using Medium Korean's reference, and I didn't need any more information about it. And maybe there are some things you're not meant to understand more than just what you understand. And I decided to accept that. So I backed off reading any more about angel signs, which, like I said, there's a lot out there. And it spans even more than just triple digits, which is kind of when I started to get overwhelmed and back off. But the triple digits have served me well, and I see them frequently and feel a really strong connection with that. And I still only use Medium Korean's reference cards for interpretation. So I would say my first rule is see what speaks to you and then follow that. Maybe it's a specific 2-digit number. Maybe it's a 3-digit series. It could be anything. But if there's something that you're seeing on a recurring basis, pay attention to that. And if you don't have somebody who has a particular interpretation to follow, just try and notice what you were thinking or the emotions you were having when those numbers showed up. Maybe they're a sign from your loved one in the form of numbers that meant a lot to them. A jersey number, I don't know what other kind of numbers there are out there, but anything identifying. Or maybe it's just every time you're having a negative day with some pessimistic thoughts, then you happen to see a particular number series and it shows up repeatedly across different mediums in random ways, but always at that moment when you're having those thoughts. That's probably a sign, having something to do specifically with your thoughts. So trusting your intuition, I would say, is number 2. And that's why I don't memorize the reference cards that I use from Medium Korean. Every time I see a triple digit number, I go look up the card and determine for myself in that moment, based on my intuition, what I think the sign is telling me. And you may be asking, well, Whitney, what does that mean, what your intuition is telling you? So I have those reference cards available on my Instagram if you wanted to look at them to understand what I'm talking about. But her cards are like a paragraph format. So there's quite a few different sentences that are similar, but different and independent in their interpretation. And so whenever I see those signs, I look up the card and I read through it. And if there's a phrase that jumps out at me that I feel a particular internal tug towards, that's my intuition. And it's subtle and you have to be paying attention, but it's there. And the more that you pay attention to it, the more you will come to recognize it. So those are my 2 tips. Find what works for you and stick with that, and then follow your intuition when you see them. And I know I'm not the only one, so I can tell you that what you will receive will be astounding. And it's not them telling you specifically what to do step by step, but it is so comforting to not feel like you're alone. And for me, it frequently is validation that I'm on the right track, because that's just what I need. As a human, I constantly need reassurance, and I'm sure sometimes the angels in the universe are tired of telling me over and over, yes, Whitney, you're doing the right thing. Yes, Whitney, that really is a sign. Yes, Whitney, keep doing what you're doing. But that's just who I am, and that's what I need. And I know that they love me anyway, even though I'm just an insecure human trying to do the best that I can. And that brings me to the third category, what I call the breadcrumbs of the universe. I just thought up this term today, actually, and I've been thinking about this all day because something happened to me today that I probably won't remember in a month from now even. But this is exactly what breadcrumbs of the universe are. So let me tell you the story. This morning at 6 a.m., I'm listening to a podcast about effective storytelling because I'm here doing this podcast and I want it to be great. So I'm always trying to improve my skill set. And this morning it happened to be trying to improve the skill set of storytelling. And the coach has, his accolades listed for who he's helped. And there's a name that caught my eye in the list, Amy Porterfield, who, to be honest, I've never heard of before. But the way it was listed made it seem like she's a big deal. And I remember thinking, I should probably check her out. And then moved on with my day. And then 9 a.m. and I'm at work and I happen to see a post that catches my eye with Dave Hollis in the picture. And he was posed with a woman that I don't know that well. But his image caught my eye. And it was her personal announcement about her friend Dave Hollis, who died last Saturday. I don't know if you follow at all, like motivational speakers and stuff. But Dave Hollis was somebody that I was familiar with from when he was married to Rachel Hollis, who's a motivational speaker, influencer for women that I used to follow back in 2015. And that stopped my scrolling. And then I realized that a post I had just scrolled by from Brendan Bouchard, that I do follow actively and pay attention to his content, was also a picture of him with Dave Hollis. I just didn't recognize Dave in the photo. And I was shocked. Dave is only 47 years old, and he leaves behind 4 children, and his life has been so public that he's one of those celebrities that you just feel like you knew. Maybe as an acquaintance, but I can picture what Rachel looks like. I know he has 3 boys and a daughter whose name is Noah, and she's adopted. And I just know personal details, like that he owns this vintage Ford Bronco. I think he calls it the Hulk. So it just felt shocking that he's gone. Well, you know what I mean, deceased. So this leads me to go to his page to look at his last post, which happened to be, by the way, of his daughter Noah. But the post right before that is him with a whole group of people. And it relates to what Brendan Bouchard's caption was, which was that he just saw Dave a few weeks ago when he and a bunch of friends all got together. And here's this post from Dave's page of all these people in this group, and they just look like they're having so much fun. Like they're just like-minded individuals spending a great weekend together, enjoying, relaxing, and having a great time. And lo and behold, who is listed in Dave Hollis's caption of people who were present but Amy Porterfield. And so what do? Because now I've seen this woman's name twice. This woman I've never heard of before. I click on her page. And it turns out she's launching a book called 2 Weeks Notice that's all about how to leave your 9-to-5 job and start your own career, which is kind of what I'm trying to do here. And when I'm talk about learning new skill sets, like I'm trying to learn how to make this a business and professional. And so I sign up for the book. And I don't know if you followed through my storytelling, but that was breadcrumbs from the universe. What started as a random episode about storytelling that led to the guest's website listing his accolades that mention her name, which my eye caught. That's the intuition. And then to later come across a post that randomly catches my eye because an untimely death. I'm not saying that Dave Hollis died as part of Breadcrumbs from the Universe. I'm saying that the fact that I saw the post, actually both of those posts, right next to each other basically in my feed, first from the woman and then from Brendan, that prompted my interest enough to then lead to Dave Hollis's page and then see that the second to last post that he made involves this woman again. I'm hoping you can see the breadcrumbs that are leading this all together, because those breadcrumbs have been happening on my grief journey all along and are what have led me here. And they are seemingly so insignificant and not a big deal, right? But I promise you, when you start paying attention to those synchronicities or random similarities or just crazy coincidence, whatever you want to call them, but you start following them, it's going to take you on a journey that you could not have even predicted or imagined. And that same feeling happens when you suddenly want to listen to a specific podcast episode from somebody, or you happen to get on Instagram and see a post that is applicable to your life right then. Those are all breadcrumbs from the universe. And I encourage you to keep following them, because the other beautiful part is that it leads you somewhere without you necessarily having to strive so hard for it. It's part of the concept of surrender, which is a topic we'd have to get to on another episode because this one's already gotten a little long. But I'm just going to leave you with, well, that breadcrumb. And I really hope that listening to this episode has given you the belief that you can get signs too, and the confidence to try out some of the tips I recommended. And I hope you really come back and share the amazing experiences that you have, because I'd love to hear about them. That's why I'm here. Thank you for tuning into today's episode, and I hope you go try some of the tips I mentioned and get some signs of your own. And if you do, I hope you come back and tell me all about them. Below in the show notes will be a link to SpeakerPipe where you can send me your own voice message sharing with me all about the signs you receive. And meanwhile, I'll still be here sharing about the signs I get, just to remind you that they're real. If you have a spare minute, please leave a rating and a review. I really love to get to read them and get all the positive feedback. And don't forget to come back this Friday when I have a really awesome interview with grief coach Lisa from @Grief Support for Moms, talking about signs from her daughter, soul plans, and our purpose for being here. Thank you.